The morning sun was barely awake, and the streets of Atlanta were still soaked in the quiet after a long night of rain. Sarah Coleman stood at the bus stop, holding her baby close to her chest. Her old winter coat was too thin for the cold, and her eyes looked like they hadn't seen sleep in days. The baby, Elijah, stirred in her arms, just 6 months old, too young to understand why the world felt so heavy. Sarah kissed his forehead and whispered, "It's gonna be okay, baby. Mama got you." But even she didn't believe her own words anymore. Just a year ago, Sarah had dreams that could fill the whole sky. She wanted to finish nursing school, buy a little house for her and her daughter Anna, maybe even start a small business someday. She believed in love, believed in hard work, believed that if you kept your faith, life would reward you eventually. But life didn't reward her. It stripped her down to her bones. Her husband, Marcus, had left one cold February morning, taking their savings, their car, and the last bit of trust Sarah had in men. He left behind only a short note that said, "I can't do this anymore." Sarah didn't cry that day. She couldn't. She had Anna, who was 8, and Elijah growing inside her belly. Tears had to wait. Bills didn't. So she worked double shifts at the diner, cleaned houses on weekends, and kept a smile plastered on her face for Anna. But behind that smile, a storm brewed. Each night she whispered prayers she wasn't sure reached anyone at all. That morning at the bus stop, she was late for work again. The buses had been running slow, and her boss didn't believe in second chances. The rain had turned to drizzle when a beat-up black sedan pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and a man's voice called out softly, "You need a ride?" Sarah froze. She didn't take rides from strangers. Not in this city. Not with her baby. The man noticed her hesitation. He was in his late 30s, dressed neatly in a gray jacket, eyes kind but tired. "Name's Jerome," he said. "I work down on Baker Street near the church. I see you here almost every morning. You waiting on the 49?" Sarah clutched Elijah tighter. "Yes, I'm fine, thank you." Jerome nodded slowly, smiled faintly, and drove off. No pressure, no insistence, just a wave of acknowledgement before disappearing down the road. But that tiny moment, the way he respected her space, stuck with her. In a world that always demanded, Jerome simply offered. Later that week, Sarah's world cracked open again. She came home to find a bright yellow eviction notice pinned to her apartment door. 2 weeks. That's all the paper said. Anna was sitting on the floor coloring, humming softly, unaware that their home was slipping away piece by piece. Sarah walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and let herself break for the first time in months. Silent tears fell onto the tiles. She cried for the life she lost, the man who betrayed her, and the mother she was afraid she couldn't be anymore. When she finally stepped out, Anna looked up and asked, "Mama, why you sad?" Sarah forced a smile. "Mama just tired, baby." That's all. Anna nodded, returned to her coloring, and whispered, "Don't worry, Mama. God's gonna send us help." Children had a way of believing things adults no longer dared to. 3 days later, Sarah found herself standing in the quiet aisle of a small grocery store. Her hands rested on the metal cart, half filled with only the bare essentials: diapers, a small tin of formula, and a few cans of soup. She stopped in front of the dairy section, staring at the rows of milk cartons lined neatly under the soft hum of the refrigerator lights. Her reflection in the glass looked tired but determined. She reached for a gallon of milk, the one thing Anna had asked for, and smiled faintly at the thought of breakfast at home. But when she got to the counter, reaching into her purse, her smile faded. Her fingers searched, then searched again. Empty. Her wallet was gone. A wave of panic flushed her face. She checked every pocket, looked inside her grocery bag, then back at the cashier, who was already waiting. Behind her, the line began to grow. "Ma'am?" the cashier asked gently. Sarah's voice trembled. I, I think I left my wallet at home. I'm so sorry." The air felt heavy with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear. Then from a few steps away, a familiar voice broke through. "Hey, it's okay." She turned, and there he was, Jerome, The same man from the other day, holding a small basket of his own. His expression was calm, kind, understanding. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, pulling a few bills from his wallet and setting them on the counter. "I've got the," he said softly. "Make sure your little ones get what they need." Sarah froze, unsure whether to protest or thank him. But the warmth in his eyes told her it wasn't pity, it was compassion. The cashier bagged her items quietly. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the bag. Sarah hesitated. "I can't take that." "I'll pay you back." Jerome smiled gently. "You don't owe me nothing. Just promise me you'll keep going." Those words hit deeper than he could have known. That night, Sarah poured milk into Anna's cereal bowl and warmed a bottle for Elijah. She watched her children eat and drink, unaware that a stranger's kindness had filled their bellies. It wasn't about the milk. It was about hope, the simple act of someone seeing her when she felt invisible. Days passed. Jerome didn't appear again for a while. Sarah's eviction deadline loomed closer, and she worked every hour she could find. But sometimes, on her bus rides home, she'd glance out the window and think of him. Not romantically, but as a reminder that maybe the world wasn't all bad, that maybe she wasn't as alone as she felt. One rainy evening, she came home to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside were a few folded bills and a small note that said, "For Elijah's milk. Keep going." Sarah's knees buckled as she held the note to her chest. She didn't know how Jerome found her address. She didn't care. All she knew was that, for the first time in a long time, someone believed she was worth saving. That night, as Anna slept and Elijah snored softly in her arms, Sarah whispered into the dark, "Lord, maybe this is what help looks like." The rain fell steady outside, washing the city clean. And for the first time in months, Sarah didn't feel afraid of tomorrow. She didn't know it yet, but this stranger, this man who asked for nothing, was about to change everything. Weeks rolled by, quiet but relentless. The city lights blinked each evening like 1,000 reminders that life went on, whether Sarah was ready or not. The eviction notice had turned into a reality. She and her children packed what they could into 2 suitcases and a stroller. The small apartment that once smelled of baby powder and cinnamon cereal now echoed only with the hollow footsteps of goodbye. But somehow, Sarah didn't feel broken this time. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Jerome's words still lingered. "Just promise me you'll keep going." Sarah found a temporary shelter run by a small community church on Baker Street, the same street Jerome had mentioned months ago. The place wasn't much, but it was safe, warm, and honest. She remembered him saying he worked nearby. On her 3rd evening there, after putting Elijah to sleep, she heard a familiar voice from the hallway, a deep, calm tone she hadn't realized she'd missed. "Evening, Ms. Coleman." Jerome stood there, holding 2 grocery bags. His coat was damp from rain, and the same soft kindness still lived behind his tired eyes. "I heard the church had new families moving in," he said. "Didn't expect to see you here." Sarah froze for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Guess God's got a way of crossing paths." Jerome laughed quietly. "Yeah, he does that sometimes." He handed her the bags, milk, cereal, fruit, and a pack of diapers. Sarah wanted to say something more than thank you, something that captured what his help really meant. But words fell short, so she just said, "You keep showing up right when I'm about to fall apart." Jerome replied, "Then maybe my timing ain't so bad." Life inside the shelter wasn't easy. Nights were noisy, mornings rushed. Yet Sarah started noticing little moments of light. Anna had made friends with another girl, shared crayons and laughter again. Elijah was growing stronger, smiling more often. Sarah herself started helping out in the kitchen, serving food to other women who'd lost their way too. Each time she ladled soup into a bowl, she remembered how it felt to receive help and how sacred it was to give it back. Jerome would drop by now and then, with groceries or to fix something around the building. He never lingered too long, never crossed any lines. He just showed up consistently, like sunrise after a storm. One afternoon, Sarah found him repairing a broken cabinet in the shelter's hallway. She handed him a cup of coffee. "You ever get tired of helping people?" she asked. He smiled. "Sometimes. But then I remember what it felt like when somebody helped me. Can't keep that kind of grace to yourself." That sentence stayed with her. Grace, not charity. Grace. One Saturday, the church hosted a small picnic in the park. The sky was clear, the grass soft, and laughter carried through the breeze. Sarah sat on a blanket watching Anna chase butterflies while Elijah napped beside her. For the first time in what felt like years, she let herself breathe without fear. Jerome joined them, setting down a basket filled with sandwiches and orange juice. "Figured I'd bring a little extra," he said, settling beside her. Sarah turned to him. "You ever wonder why you met certain people at certain times?" He nodded slowly. "All the time. I used to think life was just coincidence. Now I think it's a setup. For lessons, for second chances." Sarah smiled. "Maybe both." Anna ran up then, face glowing. "Mama, look what Mr. Jerome taught me." She held out a small folded paper, an origami bird, clumsy but beautiful. Jerome grinned. "Told her if she keeps folding, one day her dreams might just take flight." Sarah's throat tightened. "You keep saying things that stick, Jerome." He shrugged. "Then maybe they were meant for you to hear." As the weeks turned into months, Sarah started rebuilding piece by piece. With Jerome's help, she found a job at a local daycare. It wasn't glamorous, but it filled her days with laughter and purpose. She began saving again, dollar by dollar, keeping a small envelope marked "Our Future" hidden inside her Bible. Anna thrived at school, and Sarah found herself humming again while folding laundry. Jerome never demanded more than friendship. He was a quiet anchor, showing up, helping, leaving space for her to grow. But Sarah could feel something changing in her heart. The wall she had built after Marcus left was beginning to crack, not from pain this time, but from warmth. One late evening, after tucking the children into bed, Sarah sat by the window, flipping through an old box of letters. Among them, she found one envelope that hadn't been opened. It was from Marcus, dated almost a year ago. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. "Sarah, I know I can't fix what I broke." "I was scared. You deserved more than what I could give. I'm sorry there was no address, no return contact, just a confession lost in time." She didn't cry this time. She just whispered, "I forgive you." Outside, thunder rumbled softly. Inside, something in her heart finally loosened. She realized that forgiveness wasn't about setting Marcus free. It was about freeing herself. The following week, Jerome invited Sarah and the kids for dinner at a small restaurant he liked near downtown. It wasn't fancy, but the lights were warm, the air smelled like home-cooked food, and laughter filled every corner. Halfway through the meal, Anna leaned across the table and said, "Mama, Mr. Jerome smiles like Grandpa used to." Everyone laughed, but beneath the laughter there was a moment, silent and soft, where Sarah and Jerome locked eyes. There was no need for words, just quiet understanding. For the first time in years, Sarah felt safe, and that night, as they drove back to the shelter, Sarah glanced at Jerome's reflection in the car window and thought, maybe God doesn't send angels with wings. Maybe he sends them with tired eyes and kind hands. That night, when she tucked Anna into bed, her daughter whispered, Mama, I think God sent us Mr. Jerome. Sarah smiled, brushed a curl from Anna's forehead, and said, Yeah, baby, I think so too. She turned off the light, stood by the window, and looked out into the city. The same city that once broke her was now slowly stitching her back together. The years rolled by softly, like chapters in a well-worn book. What once felt like survival had slowly turned into living again. Sarah had moved into a small apartment not far from the church, a place with sunlight pouring through the windows and laughter echoing down the hallway. The shelter days were behind her, but she carried their lessons like sacred stones in her pocket. Gratitude, grace, and the courage to begin again. By now Elijah was 1 year old, curious and full of mischief. He had Jerome's calmness, though Sarah never said that out loud. Anna, now 9, was her mother's mirror image, strong, thoughtful, and wise beyond her years. Every morning, Sarah would pack lunches, hum soft gospel tunes, and send them off with a kiss. Then she'd head to the daycare where she worked full-time, caring for other people's children while quietly rebuilding her own life. Jerome still visited often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to help fix a leaky faucet or hang a picture on the wall. But more often, he came simply to sit. They would share coffee on the porch, talking about little things, weather, community, Anna's grades, Elijah's new words. He never pushed for more, never demanded a title, and maybe that's what made Sarah love him even more. But life, as always, had its tests. One chilly autumn evening, Sarah received a phone call that froze her heart. It was from a woman in Mississippi, Marcus's sister. Sarah, the woman said softly, I thought you should know. Marcus passed away last week. Heart attack. He'd been asking about you and the kids before it happened. The world seemed to tilt for a moment. Sarah thanked her politely, hung up the phone, and sat still for a long time. Marcus, the man who'd once promised forever, the man who'd left without a goodbye. He was gone now, forever this time. That night, Sarah walked out to the balcony, the city lights shimmering below. Jerome found her there a while later. You okay? He asked quietly. She nodded, though tears glistened in her eyes. He's gone, Jerome. Marcus, he's really gone. Jerome didn't say anything at first. He just placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Sarah whispered, You know what's strange? I'm not angry anymore. I thought I'd hate him till my last breath. But right now, all I feel is sad. Sad that he never found peace. Jerome's voice was steady. That's because you found yours. She turned toward him, the wind catching her hair, and for the first time in years, she smiled through tears. A few days later, Sarah received another envelope. No return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper in Marcus's handwriting. It read, Sarah, if this reaches you, know that I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to love myself. I hope one day you and the kids will remember me with kindness, not pain. Sarah sat on the couch, the letter trembling in her hands. Anna walked in quietly and sat beside her. Is that from Daddy? Sarah nodded. Yes, baby. He wanted us to remember him with kindness. Anna took her mother's hand. I already do, Mama. 'Cause you always said forgiveness is how hearts heal. Sarah blinked back tears and kissed her daughter's forehead. In that small, innocent moment, she realized that healing had already happened, not in grand gestures, but in quiet choices made each day. Months later, Jerome helped Sarah move again, this time into a small home of her own. The front porch had room for 2 chairs, and the backyard had space for a little garden Anna wanted to plant. The day they moved in, Jerome stood on the porch, hammer in hand, hanging a wooden sign he'd carved himself. It read, "The Milk Promise, Love Lives Here." Sarah touched the sign gently. "You remembered," Jerome smiled. "How could I forget?" That milk was more than a promise. It was the start of everything. They stood there for a long moment, sunlight warming their faces. Inside, Elijah giggled as Anna chased him around with a paper airplane. Their laughter filled the home like music. Time passed, but Sarah never forgot where she came from. She started volunteering at the same shelter that once gave her refuge, helping other mothers find their way out of the dark. She created a small community program called the Milk Promise Foundation, offering support for single mothers, childcare, financial literacy, and counseling. Jerome was there every step of the way, fixing, organizing, and sometimes just sitting quietly at the back during meetings, watching her lead. And every time Sarah stood in front of a group of struggling women, she would tell her story, not as a tale of pain, but as one of grace. Sometimes, she would say, God doesn't change your situation right away because he's still changing your heart. And when he's done, he'll send you people who remind you that you were never meant to walk alone. One spring evening, years later, Sarah sat on that same porch, now surrounded by flowers Anna had planted. Elijah, now a tall, gentle teenager, was reading on the steps. Jerome sat beside Sarah, his hair flecked with gray, his hand resting over hers. Anna came out with her graduation cap in hand, smiling proudly. "Mama, guess what? I got accepted to nursing school." Sarah's heart swelled. "Just like I once dreamed of." Anna nodded. "And I'm gonna finish it for both of us." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. Jerome reached over and whispered, "You did good, Sarah. You kept your promise." Sarah looked at the fading sunset and smiled. "No, we did good." Years later, people would still talk about Sarah Coleman, the woman who turned her pain into purpose, her scars into lessons. Her foundation grew into a haven for hundreds of single mothers. Her daughter, Anna, became a nurse, caring for others the way her mother once cared for her. And Elijah, he became a storyteller, sharing tales of love, struggle, and resilience, just like the one that had started it all. Every year on the anniversary of the day she met Jerome, Sarah would pour a glass of milk and set it on the table. A simple reminder of the day a stranger's kindness became a lifetime of grace. The milk promise, she once said in an interview, wasn't about milk at all. It was about hope, about choosing to believe that even in the darkest moments, love still finds a way to pour itself back into your life. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the woman who once stood at a cold bus stop with nothing but faith and a baby in her arms now stood surrounded by warmth, love, and legacy. Proof that healing isn't found in forgetting the past, but in forgiving it and learning to bloom again.